What's the stingiest thing a friend has done that made you question your friendship with them? When I was in high school, a girl I considered a close friend could not afford tickets to see a band we both loved. I saved my pocket money and got her a ticket to see them with me. She was so grateful she cried. But a few weeks later she entered a radio competition to win tickets and meet the band, for her and a friend. She won. She called me up and screamed excitedly down the phone, and I was super excited too because naturally I assumed we were going together. She told me she was taking a different friend instead of me and I could give the ticket I had bought for her to someone else. As a 14-year-old, this broke my heart. I would have given anything to have met that band. It was a long time before I did a favor like that for someone again. I invited my friend to go out for brunch, my treat. She agreed and I was looking forward to having girl time with her. She later said her fiancé really wanted to come too, and asked if I'd mind him joining us. He was weird and annoying, and now instead of a girl hangout I'd be third-wheeling with them, but I said alright, no problem. We went and as expected, her fiancé was getting on my nerves, but whatever. When the bill came, her fiancé who invited himself along didn't make any move to pay or at least cover his portion, so I picked up the bill and paid for him too. I guess that wasn't good enough for him, because he complained that I tipped too much. His exact words were, "That waitress is ugly. Ugly waitresses don't deserve tips." My friend just sat there with this blank little smile on her face as this was happening. A few months after that happened, I heard from some other friends who went out for dinner with the couple. During this outing, he ate his entire meal, cleaned his plate, not a bite left, then called the server over and said it was the worst food he'd ever eaten. Then he demanded that the restaurant, a small family-run business, comp not only his meal, but also my now former friend's meal and their drinks. She just sat by silently while her fiancé acted like a complete ass. Everyone else at the table was mortified. There were a few other similar incidents that led to us trying to have an intervention with the friend, but it became clear that she condoned his awful behavior and would stand by him no matter what. She married him despite him being the dustiest, brokiest, and most embarrassing man I've ever met. So I guess it wasn't really my friend who did something stingy, but her fiancé's stinginess made me question my friendship with her. Not me personally, but my boyfriend's best friend sent him a 100% serious Venmo request for 37 cents for a single shrimp after my boyfriend ate one while at dinner with friends. Went to my local CVS and bought Valentine's Day gifts with my friend. She bought her BF a gift, I bought one for mine, and we picked out some generic cards and candies for our close friends. We split the cost in half and split the change in half as well, and started walking home when she realized she had purchased less things than I did, so she wanted more cash from me even though I had essentially zeroed out my extra bucks and coupons. She argued that I still spent more than she did and wanted me to give her back more change. Sure, I said, let's do the math. You bought $10 worth of merch, I bought $20 worth, but then I used coupons totaling $15, so actually I only spent $5, so you owe me some of that refund change. I've never seen anyone angrier than her when she forked over the few dollars she had gotten back in change. She bought us tickets as a Christmas present, then cancelled on me last minute due to COVID, understandable, but encouraged me to go anyway and guilted me into buying both tickets from her because she wouldn't stop crying over the phone until I offered. It was at that point I realized that her crying and me fixing was a big theme. Turns out she didn't even buy the tickets, her company did. Dropped her ass when I found out. A couple months ago I was out with a friend who I hadn't seen in a while. The card machine at the place we had dinner wasn't working, so I paid cash for both of us and said, "You can cover the drinks later." We walked to a nearby bar and each have 2 drinks. We asked to pay. I didn't immediately get my wallet out because I assumed she was paying, and she just awkwardly asks for separate bills. And it was less than the dinner bill. A few days later she invites me to a nightclub with another friend. The third friend pays for the first round of drinks. I pay for the second round of drinks. When it came time to pay for the third round, my friend just looks away and pretends she doesn't see the bartender lol. So we pay again. Things like this happened a few times with this friend. I became more diligent about asking for my money back the last time we met. She seemed quite annoyed with that and has barely messaged me since. I think it's time to cut her off for good since I know how greedy she is now and that it's not just forgetfulness. Childhood friend asked to go to a concert together, her first concert ever. I paid for travel, food, hotel room, and even drinks at the event. It kinda bothered me that she never offered to pay her half, but I was doing much better financially than her, so I didn't push. Once we got back to my home after the concert, she refused to leave until I rotated her tires for her. Made me realize what a self-absorbed user she was. Dropped her after that. Went on a double date. My husband offered to pick them up because parking in New Orleans can be a pain in the ass. We go to a very nice steak place. It's pricey, but we knew that going into it. Our bill was $450 for the four of us. My husband and her date decided to split it right up the middle since we all got basically the same thing save for a few drinks. She whips out the calculator and starts dividing up the bill down to the penny and tries to justify it by saying she doesn't want to pay for something that wasn't hers. So, as a direct clap back, I told her we need $35 for parking plus fuel, and $20 for the drink we paid for at the bar while we waited for our table. She got real heated about that and I honestly felt bad for the guy. He was having a great night until then. We liked him. She had never done anything like that before, so it was super out of character for her. I still never got a direct answer for what the hell that was about. I've since distanced myself from her, not cut her off, but I'm damn sure not going out with her again. Wasn't a single act but our entire friendship. She was such a grifter and a user. I'd pay for everything. It actually hurts to imagine how much money I'd given her out of the goodness of my own heart. Meanwhile, she'd not pay back any of it, but would literally expect me to pay her back for a $5 coffee. She also literally stole my Nintendo DS that I let her borrow, bragging to another friend that it was hers. Okay, so this happened with the guy the first was recently dating, and it is the reason I ended things. We went to his property and he wanted to go to a bar. We were in the sticks, so I let him drive my car, but it was a four-wheel type situation. The whole time he is driving way too fast and I am asking him to slow down, and he argues with me about it the entire time. We get off the dirt road and my car is making a horrible sound. He had left the parking brake on. I said I was going to take the car to a mechanic and he argued with me that he could fix it himself, but I didn't trust him, so I said I would pay for half of it. It was $250 each. A week later, he sent me a $14 Venmo request for maple syrup he bought me at Costco. I dumped him over the phone that night. I had a friend who wanted to come see me and spend some time, but she could only afford the plane ride. Cool, stay at my house, and since I didn't have to fly, I paid for all sorts of things to do while she would be here. She gets here with a friend and basically turned me into a third wheel. She used the trip to cheat on her husband. And didn't do any of the things we had planned out. Got mad at me for saying her guy friend couldn't stay in my house. So I told her husband, and dropped her as a friend. Looking back, I realized she was just using me as emotional support, that she didn't actually care about me at all. Tickets to her favorite band, tickets to a few different clubs, a city tour and sip, etc. I used my vacation and my money and she wasted my time. Fuck her. She wanted me to gift her all the stuff, but I decided to donate it all to some single moms on my local Buy Nothing page and then spent the week with my husband lounging around lol. My best friend is so cheap, she'll only go out for lunch if I pay. The last time we were out and about Christmas shopping, she suggested we have lunch because she's starving. We stop at Leanne Chin's. I went through the line first and only paid for my lunch. I knew she was going to try to make me pay for hers too, but I was already filling my drink, and finding us somewhere to sit. That was November, it's July, we haven't gone out for lunch since. I had a friend that really wanted me to move in with her and her boyfriend, but it just never worked out. Later on they let it slip that they were charging their tenants the full cost of the mortgage so that they were basically living there for free. I have absolutely no doubt that that's what they wanted me to do. I had a friend who would organize girls' dinner, order a ton of appetizers and expensive drinks, and just as the bill was about to come, she would complain about her money troubles. The messed up part was that her friends were so used to this that they just covered her portion, leaving me to be the asshole for not wanting to. I started to bring cash only, and then stopped going altogether. It said a lot about her as a person, a very casual but calculating user. I was always that friend who, if I wanted to do something and my friends couldn't afford to, I would pay, and they would either pay me back or pay for us both next time. One friend I paid for countless times and she paid for me once or twice. I didn't mind because I knew her situation wasn't good and I wasn't dropping $100s just 20 here or there. I recently got really sick and had to leave my job. I ran through my worker's disability. Ran through my savings. Now I have nothing. This same friend wanted to go to dinner and the movies at a place where you eat dinner while watching the movie and I told her I had no money so I couldn't. She said she'd pay for me so I agreed and we set a date. It rolled around and we went to the theater and she walked up to the counter and was like, "Yes, one ticket to Guardians of the Galaxy 3 please." I almost broke down crying in the lobby. I spent my last $50 at that movie, dinner, and I now have 46 cents in my bank account and don't have any idea when I'll be getting any money. I'd have told her that she said she'd pay and if she wasn't willing to do that, then she'd have to see it alone. I have really bad anxiety, which this person knows about, so I feel like she used that against me to get her way. I felt put on the spot and like I had no choice so I went with it. This person also drove so it was either spend the money on an Uber or spend the money on the movie I really wanted to see. I deeply understand and relate. It took me 30 years but I now can speak up in GKOSE awkward situations. I just phrase it like it was a silly mistake like "Girl, don't forget me, you know I'm broke." It takes just a few seconds of just forcing yourself to blurt it out. I know it's much easier said than done but it has changed my life for the better. I also finally learned that no is a complete sentence. Sending you encouragement from one meek heart to another. This is a pet peeve of mine. All the sudden people start keeping score of good deeds. Like WTF, you've been keeping score. They also only ever seem to know their score. I had a close friend of 15 years that would keep score of every kind thing she did for me. I didn't know that she was keeping score until me told me one night after dinner. When she was a broke student I paid for a lot of the activities we did. I was happy to do it because I loved being in her company. She was like sunshine to me. One day the tables turned and she was making more money than me while I was back in school. One night we had an argument because she felt like she was paying more than me. She could only pinpoint a few instances dating back a few years, and that I wasn't holding up my end. She said that she was more of a taker than a giver and wanted friends that could provide her with a certain lifestyle. I couldn't provide what she was looking for but her other friends could, so I removed myself from the equation. I had accidentally left my wallet at a friend's house when I was in high school. She gave it back to me at school the next day, minus the petty cash that was in it. I asked her what happened to it and she just looked at me stupidly and lied to my face about not having even gone through it. I just was like, okay, and that was the end of that friendship. She knew my husband would be paying so she decided to order sushi as her appetizer, lobster and then filet mignon. Keep in mind this is a 5-star restaurant. She ordered $25 drink, took one sip, said it was bad and then ordered a different $25 drink. We had already ordered plenty of sides and appetizers for the table to share. I know for a fact she wouldn't have ordered that much food if she knew she had to pay. She never offers to pay, not even once in my life. That vibe. My husband, then boyfriend, and I went out to dinner with a coworker, friend and her husband. My husband has a great job. Hers was delivering newspapers for a living at the time. So my guy paid for the entire dinner. My friend was gracious enough to thank him, but the next day at work she cornered me and asked me how much he made, what his salary was. I said I didn't know, but it was more than either of us made, we worked the same job. She said, completely seriously, as though we were conspiring together to bilk my boyfriend, "From now on, we'll get him pay for everything." Went on a weekend bachelorette trip to Dallas with 4 or 5 girls. I really got along with and liked all of them before this event. My idea of a bachelorette party is the bride should not be expected to pay for anything or very little, considering it is her last hurrah, and considering there were 4 or 5 of us to split the costs of everything. Apparently, none of the other bridesmaids felt that same way, including the Mo, who was the bride's little sister. Meal after meal, drinks after drinks, I would sit awkwardly in silence just to see if anyone else would pick up the bride's tab. No one ever did. I paid for all of our Ubers for 2 days, 2 nights, picked up probably 75% of the bride's food and drinks. She would pay for herself when no one volunteered. Was even the only person to bring cash to the strip club we went to. That the Mo insisted we get a VIP table for and split, which was close to $100 per person. We ended up in Deep Ellum on the last day and suddenly a few of the girls had extra money to get tattoos. It was the absolute worst weekend, and other than the bride I do not talk to any of those girls anymore. I will say on the way home the bride thanked me over and over again and said, "I don't know what I would have done without you here this weekend. Thank you so much, you really made this special." So I can walk away from the whole experience at least knowing she'll remember having a good bachelorette weekend. My friend of 47 years, we live far apart and only visit about once a year. I was visiting her in California and she took me wine tasting. I am not into wine, don't like wine, but decided to go with her as it's something she is really into. We go to some really cute places and I am having fun just seeing the sights and walking around at all the shops. We go into a nice wine place where we sample some wines and there was one I actually liked. So she orders a bottle. It was smaller than a regular bottle of wine and cost her $40. I was like, whoa, but she has money and she knows wine, so whatever. We get back to her place and she pours herself a glass of her newly bought wine and pours me a glass of the wine I liked. That glass knocked me out. It was like a sleeping pill, so I went to bed soon after. Next day I was packing to leave and she goes, "I don't drink that kind of wine and I have no need for it, so can you just give me the $40 and I will pack the rest of it up for you to take with you?" I just stood trying to comprehend what she just said. I am non-confrontational and I really had no words, so I agreed, gave her the money and she packed the bottle in the special wine bag. I would have never spent that kind of money on wine. I still am in shock on that one. There has been other times, like always choosing expensive restaurants, where I will just order stuff off the appetizer menu and water, while she order 4 courses, yet she asks to split the bill 50-50. One year on my birthday I got to actually pick the place that was reasonably priced, but she kept ordering birthday shots. Stop letting yourself get walked over. Asked a friend and her husband to go on a weekend trip. They picked and booked the Airbnb, which had a separate mill space, which was a separate building the size of one of those cute garden sheds. They had the main gorgeous house. I had a loft bed I had to climb a ladder into, no window shades. TBH, I was fine with it until at the end of the trip they charged me half the Airbnb cost. Never staying somewhere with them again. Living with my friend at her first house was making our friendship sour, so I decided to move to a more convenient location and gave notice. She made me pay full rent up to the notice period once I moved out, so I was paying double rent. My friend said that it was a stink move on her part, but it was her house and I got that she had to pay her mortgage, so I wasn't fussed. It was in the agreement. Months and months later, I found out that she didn't even replace me as a tenant, and was also going on multiple, expensive trips, so she didn't actually need the rent money but still made me pay, knowing that I was struggling to pay double rent with my low-paying job. She said she was short on her rent and asked me to borrow $50, which at the time was a non-insignificant amount considering we were broke-ass students. She seemed to be needing it, so I gave it to her with the promise of it being paid back eventually. I gave her the money. 10 minutes later she told me about her plans to gift her recently acquired boyfriend a little vacation. She had just found a nice B&B, $50 a night. Weird, I thought, seems to me like I'm the one gifting you guys a vacation. But hey, she's gonna pay me back, right? Months and months and months later, she remembers and says she wants to thank me by taking me out for dinner. Silly me though, she would pay me back and pay for dinner? Nope, she offered me a dinner in a shitty pizza place that amounted to $30 for 2 people, drinks included. So she paid me back $15, never saw the rest. A couple months later, she asked me if I could lend her $350 for rent. My silence was so staggering that in the following 15 years she never asked for money again. She's otherwise been a pretty good friend and I'm glad I didn't cut her out, but the whole situation still bothers me when I think about it. Me and my best friend, now ex-best friend, long story, went out to dinner to celebrate my birthday. Nothing fancy, we went to this great Chinese restaurant that wasn't expensive at all. Our bill came out to like $30 and we shared everything we ordered. She asked for separate bills. This girl was making like $80K a year, lived at home with her parents and paid for nothing. Her parents covered everything for her, so all of her income was disposable. She would brag sometimes about spending like $1,800 online shopping in an afternoon. Couldn't even pay a $30 bill for her best friend of 20 years' birthday. Edit. Thread is locked so I can't reply to people, but yes, I have paid for stuff for her in the past, including birthday meals. She really became stingy when she started making a lot of money. Another example, for one of her birthdays she rented out a booth at a very high-end club in Toronto. It cost like $1,500. She could have easily paid for it herself but instead had all of the people she invited pay for it. It was about $100 a head. She still didn't have enough to cover the cost even after everyone paid her, so she was asking people to go to the ATM and take out more money. We were all paying rent and bills, and like I said above, her parents covered everything for her, and so the $100 was already a big ask. Back to my birthday meal. We ordered dishes to share, not separate meals, and just sampled each other's. We had also been friends for 20 years at that point, so I don't think it was ridiculous to expect her to cover a $30 bill, especially when I've paid for her in the past. Every time we would hang out I would pay for everything. At first it was like, okay, times are tough for you and I want to do fun stuff so I got you. But then it became blatantly disrespectful when times were no longer hard for her. One time in 10 years I asked for some money back from a day she forgot her card and would pay me back. I spent around $150 on just her that day, stupid shit too. Souvenir type thing she needed. I asked for $100. She hit me with when I get paid and then totally ghosted me the next week, including my birthday. Which is wild because, you said you had money and just forgot your card lol. I reached out to her about birthday plans in that week, never even mentioned the money again, and got nothing until about a month later. I didn't respond to that and that was 2 years ago. Zero regrets ending that friendship. A friend and I worked together, kind of. I worked in the restaurant as a server on the dinner shift and she was a bartender. About a year into our friendship, she got a DUI and her license was suspended. She lived in a nearby town about 45 minutes away from the restaurant. Since we worked the same days, I'd get off work. The restaurant closed at 10 on weekdays and 11 on weekends and I was out about 30 minutes later, and I'd wait for her to close down the bar, usually around 2:30 or 3 o'clock a.m., before she could leave. Then I'd drive her home, about 45 min to her house and 45 min back to my place near the restaurant where we worked. One of her family members drove her to work. On the way to her house, we'd sometimes stop at a 24-hour diner for something to eat and we'd split the bill evenly, each paying half no matter what we ordered. She never once offered to pay the full bill or offered me gas money. But that's not even the stingy part. One night I wasn't working but she called and asked if I could take her home from work anyway since she couldn't get a ride and didn't want to have to stay in a motel. I went and picked her up at 2:30 in the morning. She said she was hungry and asked if I wanted to stop at a 24-hour diner. I only had about $3 on me. I lived hand to mouth on my tips and that day I hadn't worked, so I had no money, but I said fine. I ordered a coffee calculating couple of bucks with tax for the coffee and a buck left over to tip the waitress. My friend had bartended all night and had a pocket full of cash tips so she ordered a full breakfast, eggs, bacon, hash browns, toast and pancakes, coffee and orange juice. When the bill came, she split it evenly and told me my share was $7. I said I only had $3 on me. She gave me the dirtiest look and said, "Well, I guess I'll cover the rest then." Soon after, I talked to the manager of the restaurant where we worked and was transferred to day shift. A few of my friends convinced me to have my bachelorette party in Vegas. At the time I was making more money than they were, so they asked if I could book the hotel and that they would pay me back. A week before, one of my friends asked if her boyfriend and his friends could tag along and she got mad when another friend reminded her that it was my bachelorette party. That girl convinced 4 others not to go and told them I was being a big bridezilla. So me and my friend ended up being the only 2 that went. It worked out because we asked a few other friends to go that weren't a part of the wedding party and ended up having a blast. However, I still ended up paying like $1,000 for 3 rooms that I never got reimbursed for. It turns out that the 5 that didn't go wanted to go to a family member's cabin and wanted to take their boyfriends. They also didn't want to help pay for gas, since we were going to road trip it. I was super upset because honestly it wasn't my idea and Vegas isn't really my thing. They had agreed to go there and had decided that splitting the cost between 7 of us wouldn't be so bad as we would all end up paying about $150 per person. To get stuck with the whole bill for hotel rooms that were not refundable and which I didn't want to go sucked big time. I ended up cutting ties with them after my wedding after a few other incidents occurred that pissed me off and showed me their true colors. I, 44F, recently had lunch at a restaurant with my old friend, who is 42 years old. She didn't have cash, so she wanted to charge the whole meal to her credit card and have me pay her in cash. She signed the slip and the server took it. He then asked us if something was wrong with the service. She had left him a $2 tip on an $80 meal. She genuinely thought she had left a sufficient tip. A conversation during lunch put me off, too. She didn't know what affirmative action is, much less the case that had been in the news. She doesn't know where Ukraine is or who they are at war with. Before you ask, yes, she is from the US. I dunno. Met her at a waitressing job I had. We were both servers. Her parents were wealthy and gave her basically whatever she wanted, bought her a car and paid her rent, but they would occasionally take her car away, so I would give her rides frequently, though it was way out of my way and I never asked for gas money. A bunch of us went to the place around the corner for dinner, drinks one night in OFC as servers wanted to tip well. She not only tried to not pay for her meal, drinks, but she also didn't tip on top that. It made me suddenly realize she was actually just a big asshole who would take advantage of anyone in any way she could. So I stopped giving her rides and was actually kind of mean to her from that point on. And TBH, don't regret it, she was a jerk and didn't deserve or need my kindness. Got a hotel for a night out in a diff city and brought my broke friend along for free, knowing that I'd have to pay her portion of the hotel for her drinks all night, which was fine because she told me she couldn't afford to come, but I wanted her there, so I offered to do all this. The part that really annoyed me was I had brought food and loaded up the fridge so we wouldn't be ordering expensive takeout when we got back from the bar. Well, we got back and she whined how she was hungry. I said there's food in the fridge, but she insisted I let her order DoorDash off my account. I didn't even get anything for myself, just gave her my phone and went to bed. Woman gesturing no medium light skin tone edit. I guess not stingy, just a major freeloader. I had a friend ghost me in the weirdest way possible. We live in different cities, and I made plans to come down and visit. I asked which weekend worked best for her, she told me, and I booked my tickets. We talked about the trip every day. The day I arrive, silence. No call, no show. Activity on social media websites indicated she went on a date with her boyfriend. And she never responded to my messages. This girl had a history of bailing on her friends whenever a guy came into her life. I just never expected something like that when I planned a trip with flights and all. And we talked about it daily. Luckily I was visiting other old friends too, so the trip wasn't a waste. But, so weird. She texted me like 6 months later asking for forgiveness. I never opened the text, just read the first preview line that phones show. I never responded. Deleted it. Deleted her.